has come. For 300 years, we prepared, we grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power.
I want to talk about Marvel and DC Comics. Had some tweets by Brian Hitch sent to me that I want to go over. But I got to give you a little bit of a backstory here. We got to talk about Hawkman. So Hawkman is a character owned by DC Comics. And there was recently a 12-issue run that was reportedly pretty good. I heard from a lot of people that it was actually an amazing series. And it was one of the best Western comic books that you could pick up and read. But unfortunately, just being a good comic doesn't mean anything for Marvel and DC Comics. They cancel things all the time. Marvel a little bit more. Well, actually, DC Comics a little bit more lately. They've been on a canceling spree because of everything that's been going on. They've been under a mess for the past year and a half. But, you know, Marvel, they'll just try again. They just throw stuff at a wall over there. But the stuff that got me interested in doing this video are exactly the tweets that Brian Hitch put out. So I went over to his Twitter, and I got to say I was actually really surprised because, and I've showed you guys this before, when you go to a comic book professional's Twitter, usually it's full of nothing but politics, but I go to his Twitter, and it's nothing but him talking about comics and art and entertainment. He has a big thing on the movie Up. You see him sharing his pencils here. I think that's awesome. That's something that a lot of people in the comic book industry don't do. They don't promote themselves. All they do is talk about Trump, politics, stuff like that. Yet, not going on here. Now, I could be wrong. He might share one once in a while, but going all the way back to May 1st, it's all comics, which is what I would expect from a comic book artist. So he seems to be one of the few and far in between that stick to entertaining. And I respect that. But he put out these. He's a little upset about the canceling of his Hawkman run. Now, this came out May 30th, so it's a little old, but I still want to talk about it. Brian Hitch says, "It's a shame my Hawkman run with Robert Venditti didn't sell as well as we would have liked. I and the writers I work with can provide damn good comics, but it's up to publishers to sell them, not creators, and here I think we were let down." Well, he's not wrong. It is up to the publishers to promote them, but I think that creators should also push their work. Look, man, like if you get people interested in your stuff and your numbers grow up, it's only going to help you, right? I think it's in people's best interests to promote themselves. But the companies should do it too. And that book got no promotion. None whatsoever. A lot of the good books never get promotions because a lot of these websites like CBR, Screen Rant, comicbook.com, Bleeding Fool, they only promote like the headline getters. So they're going to promote New Warriors before they promote Hawkman. You know what I'm saying? Because, well, New Warriors, that's a book that's going to stir up some buzz. Or anytime they do one of these, like, SJW characters, they make the news like crazy. Like, those books get the primary promotion. And they're not very good books. Usually, 9 out of 10 times those books are shit. They're trash. And all they do is kind of ruin comics. But those get all the promotion from both companies. They'll push those up all day long, and they'll let books like Hawkman burn. But that's been a problem in the industry for a long time now. So anyway, he continues on and says, Hawkman launched in a week sandwiched between the launch of Bendis' Superman and Snyder's Justice League. He's talking about Scott Snyder, by the way, not Zack Snyder. Scott Snyder is a American comic book writer. Very hit or miss, in my opinion. Sometimes he can put out some really good stuff. Go read Batman Court of Owls if you want to read a good Scott Snyder run. Sometimes he can get a little bit too wordy, but for the most part, he's all right. I think we got an announcement, but no pushes or fanfares, and of course, all the attention in stores and buyers went to those two launches, which had huge initiatives. And they were heavily pushed. Bendis' Superman, of course, looking back on that, was pure garbage. He ruined that run. But in every single comic book, Bendis is coming. Bendis is coming. They promoted him in every single book. And he got a 2-page spread of Superman, and it would say Bendis is coming on the other page. Nobody was excited for that. Anybody that was reading those books at the time knew that this was going to be a disaster. But that's another story for another time. Scott Snyder's Justice League was pushed heavily because they were notably using the cast from the animated series. So a lot of people were really pumped for that because we had like everyone's favorite roster all together once again. That book wasn't very good either because it was just full of wordy Scott Snyder crazy plots, which I didn't care for. Maybe you would. This kind of works against what Brian Hitch is saying a little bit, though, because Bendis' Superman was promoted heavy and the sales dipped real fast on that, though that's maybe, I guess the beginning of his run's numbers were good, which is why everyone was jumping all over it. Snyder's Justice League numbers kind of fell off as well. So no, I guess they don't really work against what he's saying because those books still had decent numbers when they launched, right? I still would argue, though, Brian, that you should still promote your stuff, but you do that anyway. Like if you go to his Twitter feed, it's full of nothing but comic book stuff. It's very rare that you see that. Usually it's, nothing but politics, like I said. So he goes on to say, I think Robert Venditti and I held up our end of the creative bargain and gave DC a damn good comic. It was DC's job to interest anyone and everyone to buy it. They didn't, unfortunately. And he's right. This says a lot about the comic book market in itself too. For one, you can't just put a book out there and expect it to sell. It needs promotion. This is a problem that the comic book industry faces. How do you promote? They don't buy ads. They don't put ads in video games. I remember, when I was younger, I would see comic book ads and stuff. You don't see that anymore. It's all like on word of mouth, and hell, like we've seen it. Like 10% of the people on Twitter don't even like that. They're like, I think it's like 5 or 10% of comic buyers are on Twitter. Like I just did a video on this, and they don't even like there's barely anybody talking about comics on here. Like Twitter doesn't sell. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Like what can Brian Hitch do? Like he's promoting on Twitter, but the comic book audience on Twitter isn't that big, right? And using all of these politics and agendas to promote your books, that obviously isn't working. What do they do? How do you reinvent the comic book market, right? I think there's a lot that he's saying here that's true. DC put that comic out for it to die, but it really just shows how little there is when it comes to word of mouth and pushing stuff. Like that book was hailed by people. I remember tons of people asking me to review it. And I don't really know that much about Hawkman. So I just didn't know enough about it to want to jump into it. It sounds like maybe this could have taken off if DC had promoted it. I don't know. But they didn't. They left it to die, and they promoted books that nobody cared about. So, I don't know. Anyway, what are your guys' thoughts on this? I'd like to hear from you. Also, if you would, please like, subscribe, share the video. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that notification bell. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Also, if you want to help support the channel, check out my Teespring store. There's a link in the description. You can find some merchandise in there that you might want to check out. Also, take a moment. Make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. There's something going on right now, and they've been unsubscribing people. So just take a second and double check on that and subscribe if you're new.